Today, we're diving into a question that is, as old as civilization itself, but it's taken on this really acute urgency in the digital age. And that question is, how have the fundamental tools we use to communicate, everything from the phonetic alphabet to, the modern internet, how have they restructured not just our society, but the very shape of human consciousness?
Right. And this isn't just some historical curiosity. This is about defining the subject of the 21st century. We're asking how this informational cybernetic environment defines us. Does it fulfill that old philosophical promise of a newly networked, rationally engaged self? One that uses these sophisticated digital memory systems to deepen our collective knowledge?
Or
Or does it operate as a profound social machine, one that reduces the complex individual to a fragmented, constantly tracked, and modulated individual?
Okay, so my argument is going to start from a commitment to possibility. I'll be arguing that digital technologies, which function as a new form of externalized memory, a pharmakon, if you will, a tool that can be both poison and remedy, that they fundamentally open new possibilities for rational transindividuation and enable just unprecedented levels of collective knowledge.
And I'm going to argue the opposite, that this environment is inescapably defined by the mechanisms of control that thinkers like Deleuze identified. These mechanisms operate through a continuous flow of data, which systematically deforms human reason and, dissolves the autonomous individual, replacing them with a manipulable entity that's perfectly suited for the demands of a global control society.
So my position is really rooted in the essential relationship between thinking and technology. We often think of thinking, or what we could call psychic individuation, as this purely internal process, but it has always been conditioned by technical individuation. What that means is our tools of memory, what are called tertiary retentions, things like writing systems, libraries, and now, of course, databases, they aren't just containers for thought. They are constitutive of thought itself.
Okay, I understand the lineage you're describing. The idea that, say, the invention of the alphabet fundamentally reorganized Greek society and thought. But focusing purely on the technical artifact is some kind of neutral pharmakon, one that's capable of being a remedy, that ignores the overwhelming socioeconomic and political architecture that these tools are now deployed in. And this is where we have to introduce the shift from Foucault's disciplinary societies to what Deleuze calls societies of control.
And why is that distinction so crucial here?
Well, discipline operated in closed environments, right? The factory, the prison, the school. Control, however, it operates in open, continuous, and networked environments. It functions as a grand social cybernetic machine. Its purpose isn't to contain you or train you against some fixed norm, but to manage and modulate your actions in real time. The outcome of technical individuation in this context is, it's pretty much predetermined by the system's mandate for continuous monitoring.
But wait, if reason is, as the Greeks conceived of it, a highly structured form of attention, an arrangement that organizes our memories, our retentions, and our expectations, our protensions, through these technical supports, then doesn't the sheer capacity of digital technology to hold and organize information offer a massive amplification of that rational capacity?
It offers amplification, sure, but it's amplification under constraint. The nature of the attention demanded by the control society is inherently different. It replaces that long-duration moral training, which was based on stable social norms, with short-term, rapid-rate codes, things like passwords, biometric scans, data profiles. The individual, that unified, autonomous subject we associate with the era of print and discipline, is frankly just dissolved.
You're describing a process of transformation. I would argue that, following Simondon, this psychic individuation always contributes to a collective individuation. It generates the transindividual, that body of shared meaningful artifact. While it's risky, it fundamentally opens a field of infinite possibilities for generating that transindividual. We have the choice to use that computational power for better meaning-making.
I'm sorry, I just don't buy that the choice is truly that open. The moment the individual steps into this contemporary informational cybernetic environment, they are no longer an individual in the traditional sense. They are transformed into the dividual, a data construction derived from rich streams of information, your search history, your movement patterns, your emotional responses. This dividual is constantly being profiled, measured, and most importantly, it's open to precise, continuous modulation.
This system of ubiquitous, accelerating control, it creates a state of deep psychological oppression, even as it claims to offer connection and freedom.
Let's focus on the mechanics of that control for a second. The machine form of the control society is the distributed network itself. The internet, social media platforms, smart cities. It follows the subject out the door and into the open through pervasive tracking systems. The core function is modulation, right?
Adjusting behavior moment by moment. And the primary instrument of social management in this structure, it becomes marketing.
Marketing, or are we just talking about communication?
No, I mean marketing is control. It works aggressively to homogenize the imaginary, to narrow the horizon of our desires, and to preempt any genuine divergence. It requires the smooth flow, the dividual through predictable data channels. That singular, complex individual, the one capable of resisting an external narrative, is simply too inefficient for this system. They're replaced by the fragmented dividual, which is just a point of malleable data flow.
That's a powerful critique, I'll grant you, of the corporate capture of digital space. But framing the dividual solely as this fragmented data construction, it risks ignoring the inherent human capacity for transindividuation. The transindividual process is complex. It requires a composition between synchronization, the stabilization of collective knowledge, and diachronization, which is the purposeful destabilization and transformation of that knowledge.
Okay, and where exactly does the digital allow for that necessary destabilization?
Well, digital retentions, specifically the capacity for public, immediate commentary and shared memory, they enable the spatialization of noetic flows. We can instantaneously compare vast interpretations across different peer groups. This facilitates the formation of new attentional peer communities that are dedicated to publicly sharing and debating interpretations. This critical mass of comparison contributes to what we'd call collective secondary retentions, that is, new, robust, and shared knowledge. The dividual may be a data point for control, yes, but the sharing of interpretation allows for a new, networked, trans-individual to emerge.
But for that emergence to be genuinely rational, it requires a space for genuine critique and controversy. And this is exactly what the system attempts to eliminate.
True knowledge, if we follow the Socratic tradition, is never complete. And because it's incomplete, it is inherently interpretable. It is traversed by necessary conflicts of interpretation. And that's where controversy takes shape and reason is forged.
And how does the digital environment support that forging process in your view?
Tertiary retentions, especially large digital systems, they make these potential pharmacological conflicts between peers public. They put divergent interpretations side by side on a scale that was previously, just unimaginable. The critical convergence of these contrasting affects and interpretations is the engine of reason. This Socratic rational transindividuation is an anamnesic process. It reactivates and refines original meaning through ongoing public dialogue. The digital system, by offering instant access to conflicting knowledge sets, is the perfect platform for this kind of hermeneutic exercise.
I have to challenge the efficacy of that critique when the infrastructure itself is designed to short-circuit interpretation. The dominant economic form of the web seeks to erase controversies. And why? Because marketing doesn't want messy, time-consuming interpretation. It wants immediate, predictable action.
But if the information is available with it,
I think the problem is the delegation of our core analytical faculties to automated systems. When we start relying on algorithms for categorization, for filtering, for prioritizing information, we're effectively outsourcing the hard work of rational judgment. And when we do that, we profoundly transform our noetic activities. Genuine rational transindividuation, which is based on difficult, dialogical processes among peers, is undermined by systems that are designed to calculate, to optimize, and to eliminate incomparable differences. These systems are not designed to foster controversy. They're designed to efficiently route the individual toward predictable outcomes. You see the possibility, I see the implementation, which is, I would argue, inherently cynical.
To really understand this deformation of reason, we have to look deeper than just the data systems. We need to consider the sensory shift itself, which, McLuhan was pointing out years ago. I agree. We absolutely must address the sensory organization.
McLuhan argued that the phonetic alphabet was unique because it required abstract visual processing. It separated the visual faculty from the rest of the senses.
This radical separation made possible lineality in space and that intensely focused, individualized pattern of Greek and later Western thought. It favored the left, visual, quantifying hemisphere of the brain.
Which led to the rise of print culture and the highly specialized individual of the industrial age.
Precisely. But the electric environment, the cybernetic network, it operates at the speed of light. It establishes an all-at-once, simultaneous environment, and this challenges that visual linear dominance. It pushes the right hemisphere, the acoustic, the holistic, the simultaneous processor into dominance. This changes everything.
So you're describing the shift toward the acoustic space, the global village.
It's a radical retribalization of the West. The acoustic space is simultaneous. It's a sphere whose center is everywhere and whose margin is nowhere. This fundamental change in sensory organization changes the very experience of reality. It replaces focused, linear thought with a kind of simultaneous immersion. And the control society leverages this immersive environment to maximize its modulation.
That is a very compelling diagnosis of the cognitive shift. However, I would frame this inevitability a bit differently. The sensory shift is an intrinsic consequence of technology extending our central nervous system. We have, in effect, externalized our memories and our sensory apparatus.
So we're just helpless to the extension then?
Not if we achieve awareness. Survival depends on intellectual pattern recognition. The shift from visual to acoustic, from lineal to technological maelstrom, we have to learn to read the hidden ground of the media, recognizing that the medium is the message and that the structure of the network is what shapes our thinking.
You're referring to Poe's story, right? Where the sailors survived the maelstrom not being the patterns?
Exactly. Survival depends on studying the pattern of the effects of this huge vortex of energy. By consciously understanding the new acoustic space, this simultaneous data flow, we can program a strategy of evasion and survival. The technical artifact always demands interpretation, hermeneutic, to guide psychic individuation. We have the choice to use that simultaneous data flow to recognize the totality of the system and critically to locate the points of ideological resistance.
That assumes the dividual, who is immersed in continuous modulation, has the psychic space or the critical faculties left to perform such a challenging act of pattern recognition, especially against a flood of information designed specifically to distract and control.
The digital episteme is, in the end, merely the newest iteration in this historical pattern of mnemotechnics shaping our attention and our thought. We possess a powerful pharmakon. We have to decide whether to use this tool for a new capacity for interpretation, to amplify our collective knowledge and foster idiomatic differentiation through open, structured critique, or simply succumb to its potential as a poison, leading to cognitive homogenization and the collapse of rational discourse.
And while I accept the intellectual possibility of the pharmakon being a remedy, I think the overwhelming reality is the accelerating machinery of the control society. It has already deformed reason by replacing interpretation with calculation, and by transforming the autonomous subject into the manipulable dividual. The ultimate tragedy, perhaps, is realizing that we are intellectually imprisoned within a seamless system that relentlessly advertises itself as a perfectly open and free society.
I think what the source material consistently shows us is that our thinking and our collective knowledge are just inextricably linked to the technical supports we invent. This debate really illuminates the profound and, I think, necessary stakes involved in defining the nature of the human subject. Is it an individual or a dividual? And the conditions for rational thought in this simultaneous cybernetic age. There is clearly much more to explore in this complex and, yes, sometimes tragic situation.